day and night. And King Charles will make his first visit to the Houses of Parliament as monarch this morning, before later travelling back to Scotland.
Hello there, everybody. Good morning. It's Monday, the 12th of September, and here at Edinburgh will be the first members of the public to file past the coffin of Queen Elizabeth II this evening as Scotland awaits its final farewell. It is a beautiful autumnal morning here in the capital of Scotland, and people are already turning out on the streets to witness another historic moment. Once again today, Edinburgh will be the focus. And here this afternoon, the new King Charles III will accompany his mother's coffin as it travels from the Palace of Holyrood House here, along the Royal Mile to St Giles Cathedral, where it will remain under continuous vigil for 24 hours. We're expecting that people could turn up there in their hundreds overnight. And we saw such incredible scenes on the streets here yesterday afternoon, with tens of thousands of mourners lining the route as the coffin arrived here, having made that 175-mile journey, 6 hours, travelling from Balmoral, the Queen's beloved estate, down here to London. As Judith Mott's reports.
Balmoral was the Queen's most beloved home. Scotland, her place of refuge. How fitting then that it's across this land that she's beginning her final journey. These were the hills she knew, the forests she enjoyed, and the communities she felt closest to. All along the route, crowds returned that affection. And then a majestic sight as the cortege crossed the Firth of Forth and reached the edges of Edinburgh. In the city centre, people streamed towards the Royal Mile, thronging the pavements and craning for a view, some up high, but many thousands jostling for position down below. And then the cortege appeared, threading its way over cobbled streets, as people showed their appreciation, and as is the modern way, recorded the experience for themselves, until the procession moved past and out of sight.
Quite fond of the Queen. I'll get. Yeah, she's been with me for a whole life. I went to school in my house just up there, and every year when she came to the palace, the procession, we all got brought out to wave to the Queen and any other different King Olaf brother and everything as well. So yes, I have a.
Some here, like Donald Wilson, had a very personal connection to the Queen.
At one point, when I was more than 10, there was 38 royal engagements in 6 months.
And there's a feeling of honour and a sense of history being made in Edinburgh.
Focusing very much on the capital city for these few days, and that's fantastic. You can feel it. And but to feel the respect and love in everybody is just amazing. And so it's something that I'm very proud to be part of.
At the Palace of Holyrood House, the next scene. A coffin carried inside by a bearer party formed by the Royal Regiment of Scotland has 3 of the Queen's children. Overnight at the monarch's official Scottish residence, the coffin lay in the throne room. Today, it will be taken onwards again.
The King and the Queen Consorts will arrive here later this afternoon for the historic ceremony of the keys, after which the King will join the procession as the Queen's coffin is driven away from here and along the Royal Mile.
Queen Elizabeth will lie at rest inside St Giles Cathedral for 24 hours this afternoon and will remain under continuous vigil. Members of the public will be offered the chance to visit and pay their respects in person. Judith Moritz, BBC News, Edinburgh.
You can feel it on the streets of Edinburgh. I mean, not everybody who is lining the streets yesterday, not everybody is feeling this in the same way. But just walking around, there is a sense that everything feels a bit different. The pace of life, the way people are just treating one another in the streets, the way people are driving on the roads, it just all feels like there's this constant backdrop that everybody is aware of the significance of this moment. And of course, as the Queen's coffin arrived here in Edinburgh, from Balmoral, it stopped in lots of rural communities that deliberately took a route which allowed plenty of people along the way to pay their respects. I just wanted to show you some pictures actually. I didn't know you saw these over the weekend, but they worth having a look at again. The way that people came out and paid tribute in different ways. We know what a keen horsewoman the Queen was. We've seen pictures of her this morning, haven't we, on breakfast, riding a pony when she was a little girl at Balmoral. We had horses and riders lining the road there. And of course, she loved the Balmoral estate. She actively was involved in running the farms, the estates, and farmers, landowners turned out with their tractors were a guard on a tractors in Aberdeenshire. Well, a correspondent, Laura Gordon, spent yesterday with some of those communities along the route towards the capital. And she's speaking to people as they came out to say thank you and goodbye.
Sombre, sad, reflective, a last goodbye to Her Majesty the Queen from Scotland. How important was it for you to be here?
That'd be one of those medals that I wear, wears her face with her picture. It wouldn't be right for her to be passing so close to where I live, for me not to be here and pay her respect.
From those who served to those whose children the Queen was a granny who went to bear.
Yeah, or he loves Paddington, developed the programme every Sunday when the Queen was on the TV and Paddington was taking off. He was so excited, so we thought it was fun to bring him down today.
All are here keen to get a clear view of this final journey of the former monarch.
Just not let the window out and just feel like we're part of it, but from the house. I live here and actually be part to see it so closely and just see how much you meant to everyone.
Most people think that would be quite a big deal taking the window out.
Not a problem. Not a problem. If you ever need it done, just get it done.
The children of Dundee greeted the Queen with a specially written Jubilee song.
Through the years, Queen Elizabeth made many visits to the city on the Thames. Dundonians always welcoming, whose politics changed. One of those who calls Dundee her home is traditional Scottish singer Sheena Wellington. She sung for the Queen at the opening of the Scottish Parliament.
Singing in public is always a nerve-wracking experience, but it was a little bit extra nerve-wracking because of the occasion and because the Queen was there. How would you describe Dundee's relationship with the one she was married to? The whole was there. They tried reading, downloading, and all. But they liked her mother, and so they liked her as well. It just, she's always been received well when she came to the city.
Well received, as she always was, on this final journey too. As the cortege made its way through the urban landscape of this Scottish city, streets lined with people, cars stopped, respectful applause. And to their patron, the Queen, who as a young girl was herself a girl guide, this final salute. How did you feel when you saw the procession go by?
I felt proud that I was a girl guide during the time that she was alive. It was our last chance to serve our Queen, and it was very exciting.
I thought it was quite nice to see my final thank you and goodbye to her service for all guidance.
So it was a thank you as well as a goodbye.
Yeah, thank you for everything that she's done for us over the years.
3 weeks ago, Rita Piper performed for the Queen at Balmoral. On her last visit to his city, he piped very up.
It's quite moving, isn't it? It's quite emotional. It's good to see so many people have turned out to also pay their respects to Her Majesty. She has to do honour them. Absolutely, yeah, one honour them. Absolutely.
There's a piece of news done.
Some extraordinary images across Scotland yesterday and here in Edinburgh. I think we'll see the same again today. as the new king and his sister and brothers follow the coffin from the palace of Holyrood Palace here to St Giles Cathedral later this afternoon for the coffin being taken to London. The Queen will lie in state. Next today, Sally is for breakfast at Buckingham Palace. There will be so many thousands of people there, Sally. As is all this morning.
Morning, John. Thanks very much. Yes, more people are expected to make their way to Buckingham Palace today, and many of them will see this view on their way. It's a beautiful shot from the Mall down towards Buckingham Palace. You can see they're just glimmering in a little tiny bit of sunshine. It has been sunny here this morning for a few moments. You can see the Queen Victoria Memorial there, unveiled in 1911. Looking really rather glorious today in 2022. Of course, more details have been announced about what's going to happen over the coming days. Information to members of the public who want to make their way here. More information about Her Majesty the Queen's final journey too. More details on this now from our reporter, Vincent McAvin.
Having been flown from Scotland to London, the Queen will spend a final night at Buckingham Palace on Tuesday. Her coffin will then leave shortly after 2 p.m. on Wednesday for a ceremonial procession, travelling from Buckingham Palace to the Palace of Westminster for the lying in state. The public will be able to watch the procession at viewing points along the route, or watch a screening in Hyde Park. As with her late father, King George VI, and Queen Elizabeth, Queen Mother before her, her closed coffin will rest on a raised platform. The royal standard or the sceptre will be placed on top of her coffin. Each corner of the platform will be guarded around the clock by vigilant units from the Sovereign's Bodyguard, Household Division, or Yeoman Warders of the Tower of London. The public will be able to file past the coffin 24 hours a day, from 5 p.m. on Wednesday until 6:30 a.m. on Monday, the day of the funeral. The crowds are expected to be so large that mourners will have to queue for many hours, possibly overnight, and with very little opportunity to sit down. Once at the hall, they will first have to pass through airport-style security. Only small bags will be permitted. Mourners are being asked to respect the dignity of the event and behave appropriately. They will have to remain silent whilst in the hall, dress appropriately, and no filming or photography will be permitted, nor the use of mobile phones or any other handheld devices. Details of the route for the lying in state will be revealed on Tuesday evening. For more than 900 years, Westminster Hall has hosted all manner of events for the monarchs of this nation. Its most sacred duty is once again to provide a final place where the people of this nation can pay their final respects. Vincent McAvin, BBC News.
We're joined now with some breakfast by the Liberal Democrat leader, Sir Ed Davey. Morning, Ed. Thanks so much for coming to talk to us. And it's really rather incredible, isn't it, over the last few days, the reaction that we've seen from the people of this country to the news.
Everyone loved the Queen. She was the most amazing person, certainly the proudest moments in my life when I met her and the royal family. And today, it will be when Parliament passes on our condolences in person to His Majesty King Charles. We've been debating in both houses of Parliament, paying tributes to our late Queen. And there's been lots of little funny anecdotes, as memories, but the love and affection that's been shown to her, I think, is so heartfelt. And if there's anything surprising, I think I've heard from all of you I've spoken to is how deeply I just hope I'm personally got my sincere embrace of unity, coming together in their grief and in their gratitude to the Queen.
Yes, for a Monday morning here, let's go back a couple of days to the Session Council on Saturday. It was incredible for us watching at home to see that on television. It was like watching history unfold. You were participating.
So I'm so happy to be like this with my grandmother who's seen it, because I grew up with them and their history of going through the war and our own family love for the Queen. And the moment, which was of course another part was the happiness of greeting the new king. coronation of King Charles III. That was a happy and historic moment. Everything tinged with that sadness.
And looking ahead to today, you will see King Charles III in Parliament making his address. And when I think in the back of everyone's mind, in all of this, we see these, the movement to state, don't we? We see these big moments and everybody's watching. There is a man, one of us just died. And I'm sure that's something that everybody in Parliament today would be very, very keenly aware of.
Absolutely. And I think the whole nation's heart goes out to him and the royal family. Their job is to be in the public's eye, even when they are grieving deeply. And I've been really impressed by how him and the consort Camilla, the whole royal family, have managed to be there despite what has been so difficult for them.
We have been talking this morning about plans for the coming days, what's going to happen. And the Wathing State will be taking place over 4 days at 4 nights. People will be able to file through past Majesty's coffin. And there's a suggestion this morning some people may have to wait for up to 30 hours to do that. Do you sense that we're at a point now where we're going to see a sense of national coming together that we haven't seen in many, many years?
Well, I really, truly hope so. I think we're beginning to see that actually in Parliament. My sense in watching and listening to different programs, listening to the public, is they want the country to come together, both in our mourning of our wonderful Queen, but also in coming behind the new King. That togetherness, and do you know what? I'm so not surprised that people are going to have to work people in a queue for 30 hours, and I think some of the estimates of how many people want to be there, I think they were underplaying it. I think the Queen was so loved that everyone will try their hardest to be in that queue, so that British queue to see the great British family.
We're talking about that great tradition of queuing. We've seen people waiting very, very patiently here at Buckingham Palace and at the parks in Queen Park, particularly to come and lay their flowers. We've seen people walking through the city with armfuls of flowers all through the day yesterday. And Tim Moffat has been among the crowds at Green Park this morning, where people have come from far and wide to pay their respects. Tim, what's it like there?
Well, as we've been on air, Sally, the crowds have grown and grown. Thousands of bouquets of flowers have been laid here. Originally, this was happening outside of Buckingham Palace, but now people are being asked who want to lay flowers to do so here. And also, people are being asked to remove the wrappers as well and to not lay heavy toys or balloons or candles. And that has been happening up until now. But mostly it's a place to reflect, to take a moment to pay tribute to Queen Elizabeth. So we're going to chat to Antonia, who's doing just that this morning. Antonia, why did you decide to come along here today?
I've just come down to pay my respects to an incredible woman who I think has been a fantastic role model for everybody in the country and globally. You can see there's people from all over the world here today, and she meant so much to everyone. And also to look at people's messages. It's really lovely to see, especially with the children, the pictures and their messages, and to read all the messages from everywhere from everyone.
So many people have said to me how surprised they've been by how emotional they felt in recent days. You know, you used to work at Buckingham Palace, didn't you? So I guess for you felt a particular connection.
Yeah, that's true. 10 years ago, I was really privileged and honoured to work at the summer opening of Buckingham Palace. So it's open every year, so you can go and visit. And so I felt that I had to come down, or I should come down to Wathing Palace, somewhere where obviously there's that connection. And yes, so I felt particularly close, although the Queen wasn't there then, I do feel a connection to her. So I wasn't that surprised, but I was quite upset. I think it's just our constant has gone, and she was our constant, wasn't she? So I feel it takes some getting used to. But I think King Charles spoke very well the other day. I think there's that continuity.
Sentiments to be shared by so many people. Thanks so much indeed for talking to us this morning, Antonia. There are many, many families here today. Beth, Simon, and lovely Amber as well join us now. Why have you decided to come along?
It was really just to take some time and say thank you to our Queen, come and pay our respects, and just reflect on a woman that was just an amazing woman to our country. And I think it's just a lovely opportunity as well. Amber,
So Carmen, yeah, just play on it. She's just such an amazing woman. My grand's over 100 and she was in my grand's life for so many years. My grand spoke so fondly of her and of the impact she's had on our country.
Simon, why have you decided to come along? How emotional was it? I think it's hit us all.
Uncle.
Quite hard. I never was saying this to my parents the other day. Never known a time without her. And it's just a real change. But yeah, I think it's just a real transition. It's that time as well. And it turned out it just speaks for itself. And it's a good people are just totally angry as well. I've got another little one on the way who's just got experience of the Queen. So,
Like reflecting so many people are. I'm just going to turn the camera around here because you might be able to see some volunteers who are taking wrappers away from the flowers. They decided to do this because there is so much wrapping paper here, to be honest, that there is a request now to try and remove wrapping before laying flowers down. But you can see the spin bag, look at the menu which is being filled up. The scale of these floral tributes really is quite extraordinary. We'll leave you with some lovely views of the flowers that have been placed here in Green Park as people pay their respects to them. Back to you, Sam.
Tim, thank you very much. Now for many, the last few days have been a real moment to reflect on personal memories. The Queen met and spoke to thousands of people during her 70-year reign, leaving each of them with a story that lasts a lifetime. David Silito has been speaking to some of those who shared their experiences, including an unexpected surprise at a very special birthday party.
Gwynplaine Hall, there was an extra surprise. After Thursday's sad news, all hopes of congratulations from the Queen had faded. But, unexpected, the postal strike was called off, and there was a special delivery.
This is really lovely. Turn around so we can see the inside.
I send you my congratulations and best wishes to you on such a special occasion. Elizabeth Regina. Makes me feel quite terrible. Yes. I'm always good.
So you were very surprised that was actually I was. Thank you, what an honor. You were probably going to be one of the very last people to visit.
Yes, I am. Aren't I honored? Aren't I lucky?
Many tributes show just how many of us have a milestone or a landmark in our life or our community marked by a happy one. The Unity tribute page has story after story reflecting this special personal moments. It was unbelievable. It was really.
Danny Santana was recorded our daughter Scarlett received a lifesaving heart transplant.
I was covered in chaos, but there was a lineup, and I take myself and me. My sister and I were invited to Windsor Castle.
And this, Gavin Foster, with Sister Nicola. A memory of a moment 8 years ago, when the letter telling them that her mum had been awarded an MBE arrived, just days after her death. It's been quite a run.
Very much so. Very much so. It's a real thing.
Nicola and Gavin went to collect the honour on her behalf, but were told only one person could be the Queen. However, the Queen decided, no, this was a moment to abandon protocol.
Did it mean a lot to you that you both of you collect?
So important. Yeah, so important. We are the only children our mother had. And if the award couldn't be awarded to her personally, it had to be awarded to the two of us in her memory. And I think as a mother
as a woman, as a mother, as a grandmother, great grandmother if she was by then. I think she did that because it felt the right thing to do.
Fantastic experience for us. And I think it showed actually the Queen herself, you know, that she realised how autism was especially to be rewarded. But it just shows you, I think, how much value it makes to her. And for us, it's students.
I came away from that day being a real fan of the Queen, a real fan of the Queen.
And Wathing then builds on the 100th birthday, the party, century day 2. With one treasured being kept very close. Excellent. BBC News. Thank you. That's it.
Very lovely. Very special. We would love to hear your tributes, your reflections, and your memories of the Queen. We will be including these in special commemorative coverage on the BBC News website. You can send a short message and any pictures you might like to share to a special email address that is queen@bbc.co.uk. So as the sun comes out here at Buckingham Palace, let's go to that and find out what the weather has in store for us.
Thank you. Good morning. Bit of sunshine top of the tail of the country today. Good central Sweden where we've got lots of cloud and recent outbreaks of rain. But it's on the southern edge of that where the warmest air will be found. That's pretty mild and lucky start today for the few distant forecasts as well. You've got heavy thunder shower developing in this sort of today, but most places will be dry in southern England, South Wales. North Wales going into parts of Northern England, North Midlands, so this is where we've got cloud outbreaks of rain. So the heaviest will be across parts of Snowdonia, sliding into the eastwards. But the very far north of England, southern parts of Northern Ireland, and southern Scotland, early cloudy rain breaks up, sunny spells, bit of breeze, temperatures here go down and what we've seen, like 14 to 18 Celsius. To the south of the cloud, though, we've got some sunny spells at times, 24 to 26. Now it's going to stay quite humid across the south of tonight. Cloudy and rain can give it across parts of Wales and Midlands, will fizzle as it goes southwards, but maybe a damp and drizzling to some in southernmost counties. Temperatures not dropping much, going around 16 to 17 degrees. But north of that, a fresher start tomorrow morning, but a sunny start. Few distant fog patches around, maybe more clear. Most will have the dry with some sunny spells. Isolated shower in the northeast of Scotland, where it will be quite breezy. Heaviest rain along
civilian infrastructure, resulting in widespread blackout in the east of the country. Power is being lost completely in the Kharkiv and Donetsk regions, with partial outages elsewhere. Ukrainian officials have suggested the strikes may be reprisals for the rapid advances of Ukrainian forces in the northeast of
Hello, good morning. This is BBC London. I'm Frankie Cameron. The Metropolitan Police has a new commissioner today. Sir Mark Rowling has promised to make reforms to improve Londoners' trust in policing. Next, a group of London MPs are calling for the suspension of the Metropolitan Police officer who shot dead an unarmed man in Streatham. Val Rivero, Addy and Harry
Parliament putting meeting to express their condolences. And then the royal couple will fly here to Edinburgh, where they'll be reunited with members of the royal family, with Charles's King Charles's sister, and then they together will accompany the late Queen's coffin as it travels by procession on foot from the Palace of House to St Giles Cathedral. That will be this afternoon. Now, the Queen will lie in rest at St Giles, and members of the public will be able to view the coffin for 24 hours. And later today, the King will return to the Palace of House, where he will have an audience with the First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon. And he and the Queen Consort will also attend the Scottish Parliament just over the road from Palace, where they will receive a motion of condolence. And then this evening, it's a full day for the Queen, isn't it? The Queen and other members of the royal family return then a short distance up the Royal Mile to St Giles Cathedral for a vigil overnight, and that's when the members of the public will be able to file through and see the coffin for themselves. The reporter Alexander Mackenzie is outside the cathedral this morning. The preparations well underway. And Alexander, people have been waiting in line already since very early this morning to get back James and to pay their respects.
Yeah, some people have been here for a few hours already. Some people have been here overnight. It was dark when I got here around 6 o'clock, and people were already here. Some people in their sleeping bags, and now the sun has broken out over St Giles over there, where the procession will end a bit later, and people will be able to get a glimpse of the Queen's coffin and also a first glimpse of the new King, King Charles III. And I'm joined by two people who have got good news. I've seen where you're sitting. You're not front row there. Margot, you've come from near Airdrie, so not too far away. What time did you get here?
7:30. Got the first train on the other and the first train up.
And what made you decide to come and also decide to come and sit it out for quite a few hours?
We'll wait till a television to the news. I've seen the colour 3 or 4 times. I think it's practice celebration and watched the still quite enjoy.
Were you expecting to have to go to London for this?
Yeah, we were taking straight down.
And you're not just here on your own. Can you tell me, we're hoping to speak to your family, but we had to come up onto the platform. So who are you here with?
I've got a girl, Daisy, she's 6, my mum Elizabeth, and my aunt Cam. And my granddad was hoping to get him to school, but he's 92, so he'll be at home watching on TV.
And I have had a little chat with 6-year-old Daisy. How's she feeling about this today?
She's trying to work it all out, still things that are hard to understand, but now she's privileged to be here as well.
And I do like your t-shirt, your dress for the occasion. Is this specifically for today?
I had got it for the Platinum Jubilee, so I just felt it was right to put it back on today.
Okay, and we've also got John, you're from Greenock. You also are dressed from the occasion. We can probably have a look at that. You've got your full Highland dress on. What made you choose to wear this for today in particular?
Well, I wore it down for the Platinum Jubilee, and that was a very special occasion. And we had the chance to be down at the game, and because of this occasion, it's wonderful that, very thoughtful that I've chosen the Royal Mile in Edinburgh and St Giles for the Queen to land state. We just had to come, but she was a special lady. I think that song that Kathleen was going to says, her beauty She passed away in her home in Balmoral, and she's lying in state down at Holyrood there. And I think everybody in Scotland has been moved, and indeed, I think, come together for this occasion. I think it's great what the Queen has stood for, and I hope it continues.
And are you hoping to go inside St Giles? I know people are going to be queuing up a bit later to get a glimpse of the coffin within the cathedral.
Yes, I hope to do that. Even for my grandchildren to have a witness to tell them that their grandfather was here on this special occasion. And I hope they see me today. Okay.
Thank you very much, John and Margot. So this happening in Edinburgh today obviously means a lot to the people of Scotland, as Scotland also meant a lot to the late Queen Elizabeth.
Absolutely. Alexander, thank you very much indeed for that. It was interesting. I was in the crowd here at the Royal Mile yesterday afternoon as the coffin arrived. So many people, especially young kids, wearing those Jubilee t-shirts that they bought only a few weeks ago in a joyful way. And some of them said that they weren't quite sure it was right to wear it now that the Queen had passed, but they were like, no, I'm going to wear it. And it did create this sense of part celebration as well as part mournful. Now, we know that the Queen's faith was very important to her, and when she stayed at Balmoral, Crafford Kirk would be her place of worship, where the Queen's chaplains would give sermons, and one of those chaplains was the very Reverend Dr. Lorna Hood, who's here with us now. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
We were just talking about how special it is really for Edinburgh, for Scotland, that nobody wanted the Queen to die, but the fact that she passed away here has given it a special resonance for people.
Yeah, I think people feel part of it, lining the route from leaving Balmoral right down to Edinburgh. People felt part of it and wanted, to be out to just to say they're part of history, because I think they realise that it just is such a historical moment as well. But it happening in Scotland meant that we do feel part of it.
You spent time with the Queen at Balmoral, didn't you?
Yeah.
In your professional role, yeah. But also just private, just little chats. Tell us about those times and how special Balmoral and Scotland was.
Well, when you're invited to preach at a cafe, you arrive late on the Saturday afternoon, and you're there till Monday morning. So you're there for dinner, lunch, and dinner, barbecues, and then going away. And part of it is going away from Saturday Hill, and that really happened. When I saw the picture of Liz Truss being invited by the Majesty to form a government, the picture in all the papers, and my immediate reaction was, I sat on that sofa. I sat on that sofa on the right-hand side with Her Majesty, and Her Majesty was showing me her holiday photographs.
She showed you her photographs? Okay.
Yeah.
What did she show?
All the photographs, beautiful photographs that they had on holiday. They had given a cruise on the Western Isles, and the chaplain was very regular. And just photographs, some buttons and maybe things like that. I'm not very good with buttons, so she had to tell me what to wear.
That sounds incredible. What a moment that was.
Oh, yeah. It's a very special moment, and you have very deep conversations as well, which will remain private because it's very much the pastor situation. And when the Queen had discussions with you do remember them. But there are other moments that you're happy to tell about.
We talked about the Queen's faith just then and how important that was to you to betray any sort of personal discussions on that front. But you got a sense of that. You must have got a sense of that.
I don't think you can separate the Queen and her faith. They're, in a sense, part of her DNA. Her faith was so strong too, just part of her. Her title is Elizabeth by the Grace of God. And I think it was that realization in her coronation and then her anointing, going right back to the anointing of Solomon in the Old Testament times, which I think that was a very, very special moment. And from then on, she really believed that she was there by the grace of God. It wasn't just a job, it wasn't something you could lay down, retire from, abdicate. She was called by God, and she would remain called by God. So God called her home.
As a mother and a grandmother as well, let's talk about the family one too, because we're just very conscious that we've just had that statement from Prince Harry in which he's paying tribute and honouring his father, and we know there have been issues there within the family, and we saw him and William together the other day, and there's been division there too. The Queen, what is it? The be the Queen's reaction to the fact that there seems to be some kind of healing going on within the family?
It'd be delighted as any mother and grandmother would be if there was a split in your family in some way. And it is very often in the occasions of death that people do come together. You know, the number of times I've been with a family and they're very wary going in because they know there's been a bit of a fallout, etc. And at that time, people come together and some of the things are put into perspective as to what life is about. And we never know the time or the place that we go. So there's a realization life is short at times, and we have to make the best of what we have and where we are. So I'm sure she would be delighted at what's happening, and long may it continue.
Well, thank you so much for joining us this morning. It's a bit chilly, isn't it?
Yes,
Yes, yes. We're going to close back up. Thank you very much indeed. As well as following the procession of the Queen's Coffin, of course, Scotland, crowds continue to gather at Buckingham Palace in London, where the Queen and the Queen Consort are in residence this morning. And the King has the most full-on day, both in terms of his ceremonial responsibilities, but also his personal responsibilities as a son and time.
Thanks very much indeed, John. Yes, glorious morning here at Buckingham Palace. But I want to take you straight now, if I can, to Clarence House. I think we have a shot of Clarence House to share with you this morning, which is where new King Charles III is starting his day. We have been told his day will be starting sometime between 9:30 and 10 o'clock this morning. And as you said, John, full diary of engagements throughout the day. So that's the live shot of Clarence House this morning, not too far from where we are here. King's due to leave soon and heading straight to the Palace in Westminster. Our chief political correspondent Nick Irving is there for this morning. Nick, can you talk us through what will happen through the day?
Morning, Sally. Yeah, in about 10 minutes' time, that service in Westminster Hall will begin. And for anyone who's ever been to Parliament, Westminster Hall is the bit right in the middle between the Commons and the Lords. It's the oldest part of the building. It's almost a millennium old, and it's seen a lot of history over the years. This morning, though, will be another moment of history because it will be the first time that we all see this address that's given by the speakers of the Commons and the Lords. They will both pay their condolences to the royal family over the death of the Queen, and they will pledge allegiance to the new King. There'll be about 900 parliamentarians, their MPs and members of the House of Lords, all there to witness it this morning. And then the King himself will give an address back to parliamentarians, talking to them about his relationship with Parliament. But we've seen over the last few days these moments that normally happen in private that we can read about in history books. Today we're seeing another one of them play out in front of the cameras for the first time.
Thank you very much. As we've been telling you this morning, thousands of people have been coming here to Buckingham Palace to pay tribute to the Queen, with thousands more expected as her coffin returns to the capital later this week. Let's talk a little bit more about what we can expect over the coming days. I'm joined now by the royal historian Kate Williams. Morning, Kate. We really do get a sense, don't we, that we're seeing history unfold in front of our eyes. We know what the plan is. We know the movements of the coffin south here to Buckingham Palace. We know what will happen after that. But in terms of the public's reaction and the public participation in the next few days, I almost don't know what to expect. I think people suggesting hundreds of thousands of people will come to the capital. Oh.
Yes, I think what we've really seen over the past few days is this real outpouring of sympathy and affection. I've been talking to some of the people in the crowd here, we're in Green Park, but there's so many people coming through after Parliament, absolutely packed over the weekend. And so many of them came, they want to offer their sympathy, express their sympathy for the Queen's incredible reign over 70 years on the throne, and really be a part of history, because it is a historic moment in the making. We watched her final journey yesterday in Scotland, from where she left Balmoral, Queen Victoria's beloved castle, the Queen's favourite place, to Holyrood House, the palace of her Scots ancestors, there for nearly 1,000 years. And there now she's going to St Darcy's Cathedral, there will be this Thanksgiving service, and then travelling to London and lying in state on Wednesday. And really, I've seen estimates of 1 million people coming to pay their respect to the Queen while she lies in state. But I think that's a conservative estimate. I think considering the crowds we have now, we could see millions and millions. So people coming from all over the country, all over the world. London already has a population of 7 million. I think that this plus all the dignitaries coming for the funeral on Monday. I mean, this is really the biggest, most significant royal event, and also the biggest and most significant public event we will ever see.
It was incredible to watch the pictures of the cortege driving through Scotland, wasn't it? Some of the scenery was beautiful and stunning, but in terms of history, how significant is it that all of this is starting in Scotland?
It's so significant that the Queen passed in Scotland. It was Operation Unicorn if the Queen was to pass in Scotland. And that moment that you saw her coffin coming out of Balmoral, being taken on its final journey, was so moving because the Queen loved Scotland. She's Queen of Scotland. It was always her favourite place. Her mother was Scottish. Prince Philip proposed to her there. And that was the final tribute of the people of Scotland to her. They all lined on the route. I think it was such a meaningful moment. It really reminded us that she is our longest reigning monarch. Many will say in the future she's our greatest monarch. But she also comes in a long line of kings and queens, not just of England, not just Elizabeth I, but also Scotland as well.
I don't know if the microphone's picking up, but we can just hear some of the rehearsal. Nobody back, still way away, practicing in the background. But I want to ask you about what we've seen of the family in the days since the Queen died. These are moments, aren't they, when we do get a little bit of a glimpse of what that family is really like.
Yes, the plans for what's been going on will have been completely planned by the Queen. So it was her desire to have Princess Anne accompanying her on her final journey, and not even know when Princess Anne curtsied to her as she went into Holyrood House. And we really are seeing the family coming around. William and Harry, when this walkabout they did, which really so thrilled the crowd in Windsor, they were so delighted. And I think that King Charles is as real as following such enthusiasm for him, so much enthusiasm, but his approval ratings have been quite low before he came to the throne, and I think he will very much need the support of the family. We are going to see the family rallying around for the funeral, and then in 6 months' time also for the coronation of King Charles, a huge ceremony.
And actually, it's interesting, as we stand here and talk, the normal business of the day is going on, the music is actually changing fast as we approach that here. And we're seeing live images now from inside the Westminster Hall, place of huge historic significance.
Huge historic significance. King Charles will be going there to receive the condolences of members of Parliament. Of course, King Charles can't actually go to Parliament, often opening Parliament. That's the tradition ever since Charles I broke in and tried to cause chaos with MPs. So that's where he's going to start off his. He's already met the Prime Minister, he's met the Cabinet Ministers, now he's with the MPs, and then that'll be the beginning of his real tour around the UK, then to Scotland, then to Northern Ireland.
These images coming to us inside Westminster Hall just a moment ago, so from Prime Minister Boris Johnson. See Westminster Hall packed and waiting for that significant moment. What will we see there in the next few minutes?
We are expecting King Charles to arrive there. We are expecting the mutual exchange of respect. It's going to be an incredible historic moment. Of course, none of us have seen this, none of us have any of this since 1952. So there are only a few people in the UK who can remember this, because most people were very small when this happened. They remember the coronation, but they don't remember all of the constitutional mechanisms that we're seeing happening from the Privy Council to the Accession Council. It has been wonderful to watch them filmed, really fascinating insight into democracy. And this really reminds us that the monarch, yes, the public ceremony, shaking hands, the balcony ways, but what's really important is the monarch's constitutional role, the neutral head of state, and their constitutional head of state role in terms of Parliament.
And what's so interesting, the difference now between now and the last time all of this happened, all those years ago, is not only are we seeing much more of it on television, but we will be seeing more of it over the coming days, won't we, for the first time?
For the first time, yes. The Queen's coronation was televised for the first ever time, and there's a lot of debate about that. They thought it would perhaps be too much for her, or spoil the majesty of royalty. decision was made to televise it, which was one of the most successful decisions. There were reports in newspapers saying, finally, the monarchy is for us, not for lords and ladies. And I think that similar fact that we are seeing so many of these key constitutional moments, these key family moments, that these are being shared with the nation, with the Commonwealth, with the world. I think this is really very significant and really shows the blueprint for the monarchy in the future, which I think will be much more, we will see much more of it.
You know, events there at Westminster Hall due to start in the next hour. Kate, thank you very much indeed for giving us your expertise on what's going to happen over the coming hours. I keep saying it again, you know, moments in history that we are all privy to throughout the coming days. That is it for BBC Breakfast. We'll be back tomorrow from 6. See you then.
Guess who's back? BBC Unplayed.
Our sovereign and our new head of state. The members of the House of Commons and the House of Lords have already gathered inside Westminster Hall. The ceremony will begin shortly, but it is not often that the two houses come together in this historic setting, a setting which goes right back to the days of William the Conqueror's son, who built it. And the occasion for which they're gathered this morning is in itself historic, but also poignant, with emotions of condolence to the King, and he is expected to arrive here shortly to receive them. Good morning, and welcome to our live coverage. We will take you back into Westminster Hall in just a few moments as events there get underway. If you want to continue watching that live stream, it is available to you via the red button. But with me now in the studio are two people who know the new King, Paddy Hobson, who worked with him for nearly 10 years, as his communications secretary, and Charles Brandreth, writer, broadcaster, former MP, and someone who was close to the late Duke of Edinburgh and the Queen. Charles, tell us first about the significance of this morning's ceremony.
Well, Westminster Hall is an extraordinary building. It is, as you say, the oldest part of Parliament, built by William Rufus, son of William I, William the Conqueror, improved by Richard II. It was the place where royal coronation feasts used to take place. But the relationship between royalty and Parliament has been a fraught one over the years. It's where King Charles I was tried. So it has mixed emotions if you're the sovereign. Right outside it is a statue of Oliver Cromwell. It was the place where the courts were, the King's Bench, the senior courts were all there. And it's also, of course, in recent years, the place where there have been lyings in state. The last time I was there was the lying in state of the Queen Mother. The parliamentarians come together there to be addressed by international figures, Nelson Mandela, Barack Obama.
The stage is set, they are awaiting the beginning of the formal beginning of the ceremony with the King of Wathing. Paddy Hodgson, you know him well, you worked for him for a long time. How will you be approaching this?
I think he'll be as prepared as possibly he can be. He said in his address, he will follow the example of his mother, the late Queen, and so he really understands the importance. This moment sort of cements the relationship in our constitution between government and the head of state. So he'll address the occasion with great sincerity, of course, and a sense of duty.
It's long years to prepare for it, but in a way, perhaps nothing can prepare you for the actual moment of taking over.
No, not at all. I mean, 15 years ago when I was there, we were working on the planning for just these moments. For him, of course, it meant really, which he wouldn't really want to dwell upon, the death of his mother. So he just wanted to make sure that we were prepared and the palace was prepared. And when the moment came, I feel, and we've seen this the last few days, he very much rises to the occasion, and it's very deeply personal for him. So his address was his and his alone, and it very much was in his character.
And Charles, everywhere you look at this hall, the surroundings and also the beginnings of the ceremony, just the history and those links between royalty and Parliament are everywhere.
It's 1,000 years of history. It's quite extraordinary. The kings who celebrated their coronations here, the trial of Charles I, the lying in state of former sovereigns. This is living history. What's fascinating, I think, about these recent days is this combination of private grief for us as individuals, particularly for the royal family, and seeing the machinery of state working effortlessly. We're seeing here tradition and the value of tradition, making this 1,000-year ritual just continue seamlessly, and it makes government work better as a consequence.
Private grief, and yet Paddy, unlike his siblings, the new king, in the midst of his grief, it is public duties like this which are going to take place throughout this whole week and take into all formations of the UK.
Yes, I mean, I think you probably take comfort in that. I mean, because I wouldn't say it's a distraction, but it obviously means he's got a very clear role that he's had to fulfill immediately the affairs of state as head of state. So he's taken on with his new queen by his side, great vigour, great character. We've seen a little bit of the informal tone as well. He's meeting people outside Palace. His own personality starting to come through as our new king. But I've been in awe and actually so proud to see him.
And no surprise to you then the tone that he has struck.
No, not at all. I mean, I worked with him for 10 years and he's the hardest working person I've ever known. He has great passion for his country, great passion for the issues that he takes such an interest in. And also a great sense of humour. And I think we've seen that already. I noticed in that meeting with sort of Commonwealth, leaders that he was already laughing and showing I think he's really come to the fore of his own personality at this moment.
Johnson has been surrounded by the weight of history, also the human side.
Totally. I mean, he is a workaholic, but he's recognised that he's going to actually change his life totally. And now, this is going to be what his new role is. And I think he's come to it at the right age. It feels like, as it were, the grandfather.
Charles, Paddy, thank you for now. Well, this ceremony in this very special part of the Palace of Westminster, Petrol Trelawney, is inside Westminster Hall.
Michelle, thank you. For 900 years, this hall has been at the heart of our nation's history.
Within these walls, wars have been declared and coronations celebrated. Foreign presidents address this country. Kings, queens, and prime ministers have lain in state. Today, it's where Charles III will make his first visit to the Palace of Westminster as monarch. He'll be addressed by speakers of both houses. Coming into the hall now, the Lord Speaker, Lord McFall of Outcliffe. Doug Barton, Scotland, former headmaster who became a Labour MP and then a minister. Lord Speaker of the House of Lords since 2019. 12 people gathered here today, members of both Houses of Parliament, parliamentary staff, their guests. There is a very palpable sense of anticipation and excitement in the air. So these peers prepare to hear the man that until now they've known as Prince and heir to the throne speak in Westminster for the first time as King. Mike Rod, standing behind the Lord Speaker. Sarah Clark, the first woman to be Black Rod in the 650-year history of the role. Two empty thrones where the King and the Queen Consort will sit, towards their right, the Commons to their left. White swans, feathers, that are such a key part of the distinctive headdress of the gentleman at arms. The bodyguard instituted by Henry VIII in 1509. Speaker of the House of Commons, Sir Lindsay Hoyle, from Ford Chorley in Lancashire. In front of him carrying the mace, Ubana Buyet, first black Sergeant of Arms, post 600 years. When the King and Her Majesty the Queen Consort arrive in 10 minutes or so, they'll be greeted by the Lord Great Chamberlain, a role key to royal ceremonial. The new monarch means a new holder of that position. So Baron Carrington on duty for the first time today. As the King arrives, we'll hear a fanfare from the state trumpeters, and then the Union flag, flying at half-mast on Victoria Tower, will be lowered and the royal standard raised in its place to indicate to the city outside that the King is here. There have already been several days of tributes from MPs and Lords, some solemn, others provoking laughter. This morning, the sentiments of politicians will be distilled into two short addresses of condolence delivered by the two speakers. Carrington, the new Lord Great Chamberlain, walking down the centre of Westminster Hall. This great open space, extraordinary roof, ensuring that the open views from all sides, no pillars to block any vista within. They make their way to the north door, ready to greet the King when he arrives in a few minutes' time.
So inside Westminster Hall, they're ready, and we can show you now Clarence House, the overhead shot of Clarence House, because that is where the King still is for the moment. He will be leaving very shortly. But Clarence House is still his home, just around the corner from Buckingham Palace. It is where he and the Queen Consort are still in residence. It is their London home, and in the next few months we're expecting to see them depart from there and make the very short journey towards the Houses of Parliament and to enter Westminster Hall to see that gathering there assembled there for them, and to then hear the tributes and the condolences and respond to them. And Charles, it's remarkable really that this moment in time, the accession of the new monarch, came within the same week of the new Prime Minister, which is such a contrast to what the Queen had when she acceded to.
Yes, when the Queen came to the throne back in 1952, the Prime Minister was Sir Winston Churchill, who had known her when she was a little girl, who in the 1920s had actually sat her on his knee, and she had been the Prime Minister for her father, King George VI during the Second World War. He was the grand old man of British politics. But nonetheless, they had their weekly meeting, their audience. But when he was asked what they talked about, he said racing mostly. But in fact, every Prime Minister has spoken of the value of their weekly audience with the sovereign, an opportunity to talk to somebody when you know it's not going to be leaked. You can unburden yourself to them, and the Queen, by all accounts, listened with good humour, wisdom, and indeed had the right to be consulted, and she was, and I think to warn, to advise. She would have done all that about party politics, and it's absolutely clear that the new king has absorbed that message. He's not going to be interfering in politics, but he is going to be a sounding board for prime ministers. And this new one, this very young one, born 102 years after Winston Churchill was born, Liz Truss, and then he came into the office last week.
Well, we can now see that they are on their way, His Majesty the King, Her Majesty the Queen Consort. They're in their car, on their way down the Mall and heading towards the Palace of Westminster. Paddy, it will be a different role, and he's had a long time to think about the different role as Prince of Wales. He had a freedom to express himself that will now be open to him.
Yes, and he said very clearly, and I thought it was extremely noticeable in his address, that he will follow the example of his mother. He understands the constitutional conventions that come with being head of state, so I think he'll do it beautifully and brilliantly. He'll bring his own personality to it. You know, I think for some of the issues that he cares deeply about, most importantly the environment, he'll still care about, he'll still think about, and you know, as Giles said, in private meetings with the Prime Minister, he'll share his views as he's entitled. But yes, it's a very different role, and he completely understands that.
It won't be a difficult adjustment for him?
No, not at all. He's a very wise man. He's watched his mother do it brilliantly, and he's very much dedicated to doing the same. So no, he'll adapt to instantly.
And this journey that he's making now, Giles, it's a journey he's made many times. He stood in for his mother at the state opening party, he's been at his side. But this is a very resonant journey, isn't it? It's a moment of national significance, but also for him personally. We wonder what's going through his mind as he travels to Parliament, to the home of our democracy for the first time as sovereign.
This is it. This is the real thing. And somebody said to me outside Buckingham Palace yesterday, somebody I happened to meet, he said, it's every inch a king. He really seems to be fulfilling it. And I think he's just accepted his destiny. People said back in 1952, the extraordinary thing about the Queen was, though she was only 25 years of age, she seemed to accept what was happening to her. And he has clearly accepted this. And the fact that this is a system that has been running for so many hundreds of years, and the constitutional monarchy for now nearly a century, means that it is quite easy to do, to step into the role. There is a role to be fulfilled, and he is ready to fulfill it.
Did you discuss in your time with him, Paddy, how he plans to fulfill his role?
Not directly, no. We got hints down the years that he would, obviously bring his own character to it. But he always said, and he said privately and publicly, I know it's a different job, and I'll do it differently.
Well, there they are, going down Whitehall now, the outriders in front of them, and beside them they're passing the government departments, the place where government business is conducted every day, and they're approaching Parliament Square now, and we will see them in a moment go through the gates into the Palace of Westminster itself. And of course then the door of Westminster Hall was right there before them, so there were some crowds lining their path. And let's rejoin Pedro Trioli now inside Westminster.
Silence here as the Parliament and the House of Lords and their guests await the arrival of His Majesty. Waiting to greet him, the new Lord Great Chamberlain, Lord Rupert Carrington, 7th Baron Carrington, became Lord Great Chamberlain on the day of the Queen's death, taking him 7th Marquess of Cheltenham. King, the Queen Consort, step out of the car. As they make their way into Westminster Hall, state trumpeters play a fanfare. Which is 2 thrones on either side. Speaker of the House of Commons. The parliamentary bases covered for this ceremony. Bases, symbol of royal authority, superseded when the King himself is present. Speaker, Hall of his address to the
Your Majesty, I welcome you and Her Majesty the Queen Consort to Parliament today on this solemn occasion. Her late Majesty, our treasured Queen, and your beloved and deeply missed mother came here to Westminster Hall many times to receive the congratulations of our royal subjects in the 2 Houses of Parliament and to celebrate with them historic landmarks and her long life of dedicated public service. She was both a leader to and a servant of her people. Her humility and integrity commanded the respect and captured the imagination of peoples and nations across the globe. Her late Majesty's joyous, unstinting and reassuring presence across the years made it difficult to contemplate that her long and inspiring reign of deep and unparalleled devotion would ever end. We and the nation closed our eyes to this inevitability, but it has ended. Only a few months after to be celebrating Her Great Majesty's historic Platinum Jubilee. And as you said so movingly, Your Majesty, in your address to the nation, we all now feel a sense of loss beyond measure. Nevertheless, the qualities that Her Great Majesty embodied with such constancy remain to inspire you, Your Majesty, your family, and all your subjects. We remember her commitment, her kindness, her humour, her courage, and her fortitude, as well as the deep faith which was the anchor in her life. Your Majesty, this is a historic space. Its walls built more than 900 years ago by William Rufus, and the magnificent hammer-beam roof above us, commissioned 300 years later by Richard II. Since medieval times, national story has taken place within these very walls. From civic gatherings to coronation banquets to the centuries during which this hall was at the heart of our legal system. But this ancient hall is a living space, and like our great nation, it continues to evolve. In 2012, Her Late Majesty came to Westminster Hall to mark her Diamond Jubilee, and we saw the unveiling of the splendid memorial window, commissioned by both members of Parliament Houses, which now graces the north wall of this historic space. And now, for 10 years, the light from that window has added beauty to the grey stones of this place, bathing them in colour and reminding hundreds, these thousands, millions of visitors to the Palace of Westminster of Her Late Majesty's dedicated life of service. Like the light that shines through this memorial window, Her Late Majesty's magnificent achievements will live on by permanently illuminating and enriching our lives and our national discourse. Your Majesty, even as we mourn the loss of our dear Queen, we and future generations will draw strength from her shining example. Your Majesty, on behalf of all the members of the House of Lords, I pledge my loyalty to you and wish you and Her Majesty the Queen Consort well in the life of service to which you have dedicated yourself. We are proud and indeed humbled to welcome you as our King, and we look forward to welcoming you on many more occasions to Parliament and to this hall in the years ahead. Finally, Your Majesty, the House has commissioned me to deliver the following humble address, which their Lordships agreed on the 10th of September. I shall now read the address. Most gracious Sovereign, we, Your Majesty's most dutiful and loyal subjects, the Lords Spiritual and Temporal in Parliament assembled, beg to leave to convey to Your Majesty the deep sympathy felt by this House in the grief Your Majesty has sustained by the death of her late beloved Queen, Your Majesty's mother of blessed and glorious memory. To extend to all the royal family the deep sympathy of this House in their grief, which is shared by all members. To assure Your Majesty that the example of selfless public service which her late sovereign displayed over her reign of 17 years, her untiring endeavours for the welfare of her peoples, and her fortitude in adversity will ever be held in reverent, affectionate, and grateful remembrance. And to express to Your Majesty our loyalty to Your Majesty's royal person, and our firm conviction that under the blessing of divine providence, Your Majesty will, throughout
may further the happiness and protect the liberties of all your peoples and all your brothers.
Ceremony, personal address, and then formal address of condolence. The Lord Speaker, Lord Ford, which then presented to the King. Now, Speaker of the House of Commons, Lindsay.
Your Majesty, let me repeat a welcome to you and to Her Majesty, Queen Vauxhall, on this solemn occasion. Members of both Houses of Parliament gathered here to express our deep sympathy, the loss we all sustain, the death of our sovereign lady. We have seen that this is a loss that is felt around the world. It is a loss to the United Kingdom, the overseas territories, the Crown dependencies, and many countries over which she reigned. It is a loss to the entire Commonwealth, which she did so. It is a loss to all of us. But we know, most of all, it is a loss to you, Your Majesty. Newspapers have been filled with photographs of Her late Majesty since the news broke. The most touching have been the glimpses into the family life which we usually kept sheltered from. Deep as our grief is, we know yours is deep. We offer our heartfelt sympathy to you and all the world. We know that there is nothing we can say in the phrase of our late Queen, your mother, that you will not already know. Over the past days, members of the House have spoken of their encounters with Queen Elizabeth. They have spoken of her sense of duty, her wisdom, her kindness, her humour, how she touched the lives of hundreds of thousands of their constituents in her visits to every part of this country. Her words have been heartfelt. She sat in this historic hall, as you sit now on many occasions. Some of those occasions were to celebrate milestones in her own grave. The addresses to celebrate her silver, golden, and diamond jubilees shared a common thread that our constitutional monarchy is a symbol of stability in a never-changing world. As Speaker Boothroyd said, Queen Elizabeth's wisdom and grace demonstrated for all to see the value of a constitutional monarchy in securing the liberties of our citizens and the fundamental unity of this kingdom and the Commonwealth. On other occasions, our late Queen was here to mark the historic moments, such as the 50th anniversary of the Second World War, a war in which she herself served in the armed forces. And in 1988, we celebrated the 300th anniversary of the revolutions of 1688 to 1689. It is perhaps very British to celebrate revolutions by presenting an address to Her Majesty. Those revolutions led to our constitutional freedoms, set the foundation for a stable monarchy. In your first address to the nation, you recognized your life would change as a result of your responsibility. You pledge yourself to uphold constitutional principles at the heart of our history. These are weighty responsibilities, as the early Queen Elizabeth said in her final speech to parliamentarians. To be a king and wear a crown is a thing more glorious to them that see it, that it is pleasant, that them that bear it. We know you hold greatest respect, the precious traditions, the freedoms and responsibilities of our unique history and our system of parliamentary government. And we know that you will bear those responsibilities which fall to you with the fortitude, dignity demonstrated by Her late Majesty. When the House met with the Accession Council, My first symbolic act is to make the oath to be faithful and bear true allegiance to your Majesty. And so it is my duty to present our humble address to you, our new King, to express both our sorrow and loss of our sovereign lady and our confidence in the future in your reign. Most gracious sovereign, we, your Majesty's dutiful, loyal subjects, the colonies of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, in Parliament Assembly, express its sympathy, held by this House the great sorrow which your Majesty sustained by the death of the late Queen, your Majesty's mother. Extending to all the royal family the deep sympathy of this House in their grief, which is shared by all its members. Assure your Majesty that her late Majesty's unstinting dedication over a reign of over 70 years to the service of our great country and its people, and to the service of the countries and the peoples of the rest of the wider Commonwealth, which will always be held affectionate and grateful dependents. And to express to your Majesty our loyalty to you and our conviction that you will strive to uphold the liberties and to promote the happiness of the people in all your realms, now and years to come.
Yes, on behalf of members of the House of Commons, delivered by the Speaker of the House of Commons, Lindsay Hoyle, taking on to the King. A chance to see the Speaker in full ceremonial robes. Simply after the his way on daily duty of the House of Commons. And a response from the King.
My lords and members of the House of Commons, I am deeply grateful for the addresses of condolence by the House of Lords and the House of Commons, which so touchingly encompass what our late sovereign, my beloved mother, the Queen, meant to us all. As Shakespeare says of the earlier Queen Elizabeth, she was a pattern to all princes living. As I stand before you today, I cannot help but feel the weight of history which surrounds us and which reminds us of the vital parliamentary traditions to which members of both houses dedicate yourselves with such personal commitment to the betterment of us all. Parliament is the living and breathing instrument of our democracy. That your traditions are ancient, we see in the construction of this great hall, and the reminders of medieval predecessors of the office to which I have been called, and the tangible connections to my darling late mother we see all around us, from the fountain in New Palace Yard, which commemorates the late Queen's Silver Jubilee, to the sundial in Old Palace Yard, the Golden Jubilee, the magnificent stained glass window before me, the Diamond Jubilee, and so poignantly and yet to be formally unveiled, your most generous gift to Her late Majesty to mark the unprecedented Platinum Jubilee, which we celebrated only 3 months ago with such joyful hearts. The great bell of Big Ben, one of the most powerful symbols of our nation throughout the world, and housed within the Elizabeth Tower, also named for my mother's Diamond Jubilee, will mark the passage of the late Queen's progress from Buckingham Palace to this Parliament on Wednesday. My Lords and members of the House of Commons, we gather today in remembrance of the remarkable span of the Queen's dedicated service to her nations and people. While very young, her late Majesty pledged herself to serve her country and her people, and to maintain the precious principles of constitutional government which lie at the heart of our nation. This vow she kept with unsurpassed devotion. She set an example of selfless duty, which, with God's help and your counsel, I am resolved faithfully to follow.
His Majesty the King, presenting now to Speaker of the Lords, Speaker of the Commons, for the national anthem, led by the band of the Household Cavalry. The Household Cavalry, directed by Major Paul Collis Smith, and for many people, most people in this Westminster Great Hall for the first time, to sing the national anthem. The words, God save our gracious King. Lord Great Chamberlain leads His Majesty and Her Majesty the Queen Consort towards the north door. This is the start of a busy day. Depart here to RAF North Holt, RAF base, the oldest RAF base in fact. Relates the creation of the RAF by 3 years. There they will fly to Edinburgh. Engagements include mornings with the Sturgeon, Scottish First Minister, the service of prayer at St Giles Cathedral. Relationship between the monarch and Parliament, showed by the familiar faces here today, former Prime Ministers. To the left of the King, the leaders of all Westminster parties, Conservative, Labour, Democrat, British Nationalist, Democratic Unionist Party. Speech from the King, reflecting on the many symbols of his mother in the Palace of Westminster. Here in this hall, that glorious window, 1,500 pieces, constructed in its Diamond Jubilee in 2012. This hall dating back to the end of the 11th century, and it was built the largest room in England, perhaps all of Europe. For 900 years it has stood at the heart of the Palace of Westminster, witness to the evolution of our political system. Words that we've heard this morning, from the language at times may have felt a little old-fashioned, but The addresses we heard delivered by the two speakers a clear message, the expectation that the new monarch will act to protect the rights and freedoms of his subjects. Charles, now the King, Charles III, shakes the hands of the speakers. It feels as if just briefly the maelstrom of daily political life, hardline positions taken by parties on one side or the other, has briefly been put aside over this morning. Members of both houses start to consider the relationship Parliament will forge with the new King. Onto the car that will take them to authority. Thence their journey will continue by air to Edinburgh. You see there on the fence in the Scottish camp.
Well, we have consequences actually the King and the Queen consort after a ceremony that really marks the beginning of the relationship that he will have as sovereign with this Parliament and with the Parliaments that will follow. He heard expressions of loyalty and also expressions of sympathy, and he spoke himself of the sense of history that surrounded him in this very special place, the very largest part of the Palace of Westminster. Charles Brandon is still with me. We're also joined in the studio by our favorite Baroness Avons, a Labour peer and very recently appointed by the late Queen to the Order of the Garter. It was your fellow parliamentarians, Baroness Avons, who were there for this moment, and a very special moment, particularly them standing and singing God Save the King in his presence.
It is really special, isn't it? Because these are moments which are both about continuity and they're about change. It's a solemn occasion, but it is also one which has a degree of pageantry which we do so well. And what I was really struck by in the House of Lords when I sat in on the Tuesdays were the tributes which talked about the late Queen and charitable contributions, and very similar words used by everyone, but also the personal reflections and some of the personal stories, bringing in that humour that really helped us to think about her as somebody who was so real, so special, and really had a way of engaging with people. But it was also a moment when people were talking about our new king and were making it absolutely clear that we would be loyal to that new king, and expressing sympathy for the royal family, because this is both a public moment but also private.
Yes, and indeed in the King's own words, he was really feeling that sense of history that surrounded him. He talked about the medieval hall and indeed about all those who had gone before him back to the Saxons.
This extraordinary ceremony was an expression of how constitutional monarchy now works. The new king, as modern as tomorrow, but with a long time for yesterday, there was 900 years of history. There was Shakespeare being quoted. This is the second time we've had Shakespeare. I think probably he's going to make the hallmark of his reign, quoting Shakespeare in every speech.
There's plenty to quote.
He loves his Shakespeare. What I thought was so wonderful about this, the two speeches were, to my mind, impeccable. And this was the House of Lords, House of Commons coming together. People who don't know about Westminster do not realise that, in fact, as individuals, parliamentarians of all parties actually get on rather well. And there are many cross-party friendships. John McFaul there, was equal to one former Labour MP, the other a Labour MP, and the son of a Labour MP, Doug Ford. These are good people, and they spoke so well, so movingly, both about the traditions, aware of that, the importance of the constitutional monarchy, the boundaries that there are, the value of the Commonwealth. Everything was in there, and it was clear that the King recognises it.
And the same as I was thinking that when you were appointed to the Order of the Garter, it was just a few days after the Platinum Jubilee, wasn't it? Indeed, it turned out to be the last set of appointments to the Garter that Her late Majesty made.
That's right. The appointments were made slightly out of order because usually meetings on St George's Day, they were actually allowed with the late Queen on the Friday before Garter Day, when she actually presented to me, went through the insignia of the order, and then we had a conversation which had some very serious elements to it, but also some very light-hearted elements as well.
Would you share any of what was said? What was the atmosphere of that? I mean, it's a very special moment for you.
It was a very special moment because I had been the president of the council, of the Privy Council, so I had overseen Privy Council meetings for over 4 years when I had an opportunity to have a brief conversation with the late Queen in advance of Privy Council meetings, 9 times a year. And the really humorous part was the delight she showed when she talked to me about the filming of the Paddington sketch, which we all have seen now, and what it was like doing that, and talking about the sort of stickiness of the marmalade sandwich and having to put it in and out of the handbag, and that jars of marmalade had already started arriving from members of the public to Windsor Castle.
Indeed, the people at the Royal Parks have said, please no more marmalade sandwiches. The Paddington Bears laying your tributes outside Buckingham Palace. We had to to be a member of the Order of the Garter is an extraordinary thing. It is the highest honour outside of having the Victoria Cross and the George Cross. It outranks everything. The Queen took it very seriously. She valued its heritage and tradition, and she changed the ribbon. And the motto, Bonnie Swat, Bonnie Parks, shame on him who evil thinks of it. Her whole attitude to everything was positive. She looked for the best in people.
And indeed, the ceremony we've just seen has been about her as well as about the new king, and that it is that combination which is in everyone's minds at the moment. But it sounds as if in that time she spent with you, this was shortly after the Jubilee celebrations and the Paddington Bear speech. It sounds as if she had relished the reaction to it.
She really did relish it, and she was also extremely pleased that the fact that she had participated in that sketch had not leaked. Because she said so many people had worked on it, and they had filmed it, I think, about 3 months before it was shown. She was very pleased about that.
She had a great sense of humour. One of the things that people don't realise, there's a fraught relationship over history between Parliament and the Sovereign. Inevitably, Westminster is where King Charles I was tried and then beheaded. So there's tension there. There's the statue of Oliver Cromwell outside. But the Queen was aware of the tension. Also, for example, the state opening of Parliament, when the Queen arrived in Parliament, there had to be a parliamentarian taken hostage at Buckingham Palace.
Even now?
Yes.
I assume the tradition continues, will continue with the new king.
But usually they're having a cup of tea, Charles.
They are indeed.
they're not tied up.
I was in the Whips office in the 1990s, and the then Vice Chamberlain, a member of Parliament who was set, looked forward to it because he got the tea served by the pages, with biscuits as well, and he was kept prisoner at Buckingham Palace until the Queen was safely returned. His role, too, the Vice Chamberlain, was to write a daily report on what was happening in the House of Commons to the Queen. In addition to Hansard, which shows the official record, he would send a daily letter to Her Majesty, recording not just the events, but who had spoken, how well they'd spoken, who was on the up, who told a particularly good joke. And the Queen enjoyed the joke that he was called this man, Sydney Chapman. So she said, "Police is a political that we should now call him simply person."
Well, no wonder her prime ministers have always said how well briefed she is if she was getting a daily letter from Parliament. But Baroness Amos, this was a moment really, this particular ceremony, where we really did see an illustration of parliamentary democracy. Parliament is sovereign, of course, but the Queen herself, when she came to Parliament for her Diamond Jubilee, talked about that process of actively signing bills into law.
Yes, we have to remember that our constitutional arrangements mean that our sovereign, parliament, and government all have a role to play. And the roles are different but equal. I also thought what's so significant about this century is that we are beginning to see reflected in some of these ancient roles the changes that we have seen in Britain throughout Queen's reign. We have a black sergeant at arms. We have a woman who is black blonde. That would not have happened when the late Queen became the Queen.
These are all signs of the time.
These are all signs of change.
Thank you very much for the moment. This is another moment in that ceremony in Westminster Hall where we have tributes being paid to the late Queen, and in recent days, of course, there have been so many of them from right across the country and indeed from far beyond. So here's a little of what we've heard in the seats.
This is a time of peace. Excuse me. Young or old, there is no doubt that a chapter is closing today, and with that, we share our thanks for an incredible woman that we were lucky enough to call our Queen.
We will remember in perpetuity the values she never ceased to embody, the moral fortitude of it.
Agree. Agree my music bagaimana tadi.
These years.
In his remarks at Westminster Hall, the King spoke of resolving faithfully to follow her example of selfless duty. Charles, they are very large shoes to step in.
Extraordinary, the global reach of the Queen. Ours is only the 21st most populated country in the world, the 6th largest economy. But our head of state is, by all the surveys accounts, the most famous head of state on the planet. So to follow the footsteps of this Queen, loved universally, is a challenge. But I think he's equal to it. He has travelled widely himself. He knows the Commonwealth, he loves the Commonwealth, and the Queen Consort has been preparing for this for some time. It's already taken on some of the former Queen's involvements in various Commonwealth organisations.
But I would also add that there is a deep understanding, isn't there, Charles, from the work that he did as Prince of Wales, through Prince's Trust and elsewhere, of a whole host of issues which are facing us both as Britain and globally. Those issues around the environment, climate change, inequality,
and young people.
And young people.
He may be 73, but actually, through the Prince's Trust, he really has his finger on the pulse of the problems of literally teenagers, people in their 20s.
So looking forward, I feel very strongly that what this transition feels as if it's about, it is both about the past, it's about the present, but it's also about having a king who really understands some of those challenges, those future challenges that we're going to have to face.
Charles, this is striking in all his public statements so far, a tone of history and a human tone as well, a personal tone.
That's what this morning has been about. That is what this whole experience is. It is human. This is a family. This is anyone who's lost a parent will know what he is feeling. But also, he is part of our history. this is part of our heritage, and he's looking to tomorrow and the future, being aware of the past, needs to be aware too. This is a man who's lost his mum. This only a few days ago.
4 days ago. Thank you both for being with us through this ceremony. Giles, wonderful, fantastic. And that brings to an end events in London this morning after the ceremony in the heart of the Palace of Westminster, the first visit by His Majesty Charles III there as King. He and the Queen Consort are now travelling to Edinburgh for a service of prayer and reflection. And you'll be able to see live coverage of that on BBC One and of events at the Palace of Holyrood House and the Scottish Parliament. All of that from 1 o'clock this afternoon. For now, from us, goodbye.
Aray ko. Ayan mga gala. Salamat kay Mililo, kay Dins Max, kay Sislin Irat, kay Lorcan, kay Genevieve na nagpunta dito kanina. Update lang ito mga gala kasi minsan lang ako mag-ALS. Kasi kapoy si Yaw-Yaw. Okay. 2 hours na ako. Ipaano ko ng 2 hours and 3 minutes. Magganito lang ako. Manonood ng news. Kasi sa next week, hindi ko pa alam kung magganito ba din ako. Basta sa isang basis, mag-update lang ako. Minsan, sa isang week, mag-update ako. Yan, Mililo, nandyan ka pa. Malapit na akong matapos. 2 hours lang and 3 minutes kasi. Punta pa ako sa iwan ko saan ako magpunta, sa Aldi ba or sa Lidl kasi maghahanap ako ng microwave. Nasira ang microwave namin. Pastel lang eh. Nasira. Kailangan namin ng microwave oven. Yan, konti na lang. Meron ako mga video. Kinuha ko lang sa TV. Hindi ko pa na-upload. Baka maano ako. Tingnan na natin. Party sa Queen Elizabeth. Yung galing siya sa Scotland patungong London. Meron akong video. Hindi naman masyadong mahaba. Mga 3 or 4 minutes. Yung naglalakbay ang patayng lawa sa Queen patungong London. Galing siya sa Baltimore yata basta sa Scotland. Doon namatay ang Queen sa Scotland. Kasi paborito niya yan doon sa Baltimore. Ayan. 3 minutes na tayo, Mililo. Magtapos na ako, Mililo. Bye-bye na. Bye. Mag-ina ako, Mililo. Salamat ulit.